Have you ever felt addicted to food? Yung tipong lahat na lang ng pinag-iisipan mo ay pagkain. When you can eat, what you can eat, and how much more you can eat. You're probably thinking about chocolates or chips or the next meal all the time. Well, I have struggled with feelings of food addiction for a big chunk of my life. At ang gusto natin tanungin ngayon ay kung totoo ba talaga ang food addiction at paano ba ito maaayos. My name is Sebastian. I'm a registered nutritionist and dietitian, and this is the Donut Box, where we unbox stories and talk about things we usually don't talk about. Today, we're unboxing food addiction. So if you're ready, let's unbox this story. The Donut Box. The Donut Box. Welcome back to another episode. We almost didn't have an episode this week. I got sick last week. I had a sore throat. I was feeling kind of feverish. But the thing about freelance and content creation is there isn't really a time that you can take a break because there's deadlines and schedules and you can try to push them back, but not all companies and brands are willing to push back schedules, work around feeling not my best but still get some content out. Pero kailangan nga natin i-push back yung podcast. But we are here. We are trying our best to get another episode in because we're on a streak. We're on a hot streak and I love filming these episodes. One of the biggest themes of this week for me was the topic of food addiction. And it came up in some of my sessions with my clients in which they were asking and talking about how they felt addicted to food. At sobrang relate ako dito. Because at the height of my disordered eating, I thought and I felt like I was addicted to food. Yung palagi ka na lang nag-iisip ng pagkain. Walang segundo sa isang araw na hindi ka nag-iisip ng pagkain. Even after you just ate, you're still thinking about food. And even as you're eating, you're wondering and thinking if this food is something that you should and shouldn't eat. It had consumed such a big chunk of my life that at this point, when I notice that I'm not thinking about food, I'm wondering and thinking, wow, I have so much brain space. Now the thoughts that I have are about tennis and my shopping tendencies, but at least we have moved on somewhat to those thoughts and feelings around food. And because it was such a big theme, I decided to ask on Instagram how you guys felt about food addiction or how you felt around food and if you felt addicted to food. So let's grab our donut box and let's unbox it. We have our donut. Okay, we got a few answers in the question of what are your thoughts and feelings around food addiction? And some of them were, I always feel like I need to eat something cold and sweet after every meal. Relate. Even until now, I need a little bit of a dessert. But before, I used to need a large amount of dessert, or I thought that I needed a huge dessert. And now I'm okay with kind of like a bite of sweetness. Another one said, why am I always hungry even if I already ate a balanced meal? Balanced meals are the ones that have carbohydrates, fiber, protein. At yung gusto natin pagkatapos natin kumain ng balanseng pagkain ay syempre busog tayo. Hindi naman yung sobrang busog na hindi ka na makagalaw. Pero yung satisfied ka na at hindi ka na masyadong magugutom sa 2-3 oras na kailangan mo bago ka kumain ulit. However, there are times where you have a balanced meal and you're still feeling hungry. Maybe it's you looking for dessert. Or maybe it's you looking for just more food in general. And there are reasons for that we'll tackle in a bit. Another one said, fighting the urge to order fast food. I think this is especially when maybe we don't have food at home. Or maybe when things are a little bit stressful and hectic, we do tend to reach for fast food. Minsan nag-order ako ng fast food kapag hindi masarap yung pagkain na naluto ko. Which happens often because I cook for survival. Now, I'm not saying all of my food tastes bad, but I'm not a chef by any means. Someone also said, kailan ko malalaman if I'm overeating or I'm just eating the right amount for me to live? This is a great question. For years, I thought that I was overeating. And of course, there was a time that I was literally binge eating. I thought I was binge eating because I was reaching for more food than usual, when actually I was just eating enough or starting to eat enough. Things like skipping of meals and cutting out whole food groups and guilt around food are now normal behaviors around food, when in fact they're actually quite restrictive at minsan disordered pa. Ang gusto natin talaga makita, ano ba ang normal na pagkain na dapat natin kainin at ano ba yung itsura nun. Had to cut sodium due to overthinking having kidney problems, though I like savory foods. One of the biggest reasons why we fall under obsessive thinking about food and food addiction tendencies is largely based on our fear. Fear around food causing health concerns or us having certain health concerns. And perfectly valid, naiintindihan ko yan. Yun nga lang, sumusobra lang talaga yung takot natin sa pagkain na umaabot talaga sa punto na hindi na tayo makakain. At mahirap talaga yon kasi kailangan naman natin ng pagkain para mabuhay. Somebody asked how to unlove sweets. I had such a love-hate relationship with sweets in a sense that I loved it, but I hated that I loved it. And I was so angry at myself all the time for wanting sweets, thinking about sweets, and even having sweets. So I understand this so much. Somebody also asked, would you advise taking supplements to suppress appetite and cravings? Well, that leads us into our topic for today, which is what is food addiction and how do we tackle it? Is it through supplements and appetite suppressants? Is it through healthy habits and routines? Or is there more to it? Well, I thought and felt like I had food addiction for years, and it wasn't easy. But over time, I started to think about food less and less until it became mostly something that we use for survival, but of course also for flavor and taste. Pero ang pinaka-importante ay hindi na siya yung pinaka-gumagalaw sa buhay ko. And I have so much more brain space. I have so much more understanding of my body now because of all of the things that I've learned. So hopefully this episode helps you dive into more about why you might feel addicted to food, obsessed with food, and what we can do moving forward. Unang-una, kailangan natin pag-usapan kung ano ba ang addiction. What does it mean? Well, the definition of addiction is a chronic brain disease characterized by compulsive use of a substance or behavior despite harmful consequences. Recognize things like alcohol, nicotine, opioids, and gambling. Some of the key features of addiction would be, of course, intense cravings. We also have loss of control or not being able to cut back, tolerance, needing more to feel the same effect, and then withdrawal symptoms when stopping. Plus, of course, the interference with your daily life, whether it be relationship, work, and health. And a lot of this does relate to what most people feel when they are dealing with food addiction. We're feeling constant and extreme cravings around high-calorie foods, high-sugary foods, and food in general. We're having a hard time eating to comfortable levels. We have to eat more to feel satisfied, and we just don't know when to stop. And of course, there's also the fact that it is interfering with your daily life. The thought of food is consuming your health, it's consuming your work, it's consuming your brain space. And it's causing interferences in that aspect. Now, addictive substances tend to hijack the brain's dopamine or the reward system far beyond the natural rewards. So there's really this heightened feeling of satisfaction and happiness when we reach for these substances that we may feel addicted to. And that's one of the biggest reasons why food starts to feel addictive, because it does light up our brain reward systems or our centers, and it feels like an addiction. Especially because most food items really have been processed and created in a way to make you feel good. You know, a chip has been designed with the right crunch na talagang mapapasaya yung utak mo dun. A drink has been designed with the perfect carbonation that makes you feel certain ways. Malaking parte ng paggawa ng pagkain ay syempre pinag-iisipan na natin kung paano ba ma-enjoy ito ng mga taong kakain ito. A lot of these things come together and feel like food addiction. Food is something we literally need for survival. It's not like other substances that when you cut it out of your life, it has no impact to your overall health, versus food, if we cut that out of our life, well, we literally need energy and survival. when we look into studies about food addiction, a lot of them don't actually see food addiction as real. And largely because of the fact that we need food for survival. Even the DSM-5, which is the diagnostic manual for our mental health, doesn't recognize or diagnose food addiction as a thing. Meron namang mga brain scans na nagpakita na yung mga highly palatable foods na sinasabi natin, yung mga matataas sa asukal, matataas sa fat, matataas sa asin, nagbibigay talaga sila ng reward sa atin. Ina-activate nila yung reward system. And that does tend to happen for a normal survival mechanism. At a certain level, mararamdaman natin tong mga bagay na to pag kumain tayo. But when it's heightened, that's usually when it can be a little bit more related to addiction. Now, the thing about food is it doesn't create a tolerance and withdrawal cycle. Meaning, we literally cannot remove food from our life kasi kung ginawa natin to, well, mamamatay tayo. Now, this doesn't mean that food addiction or the feeling of being addicted to food is automatically invalid and not real. Hindi ibig sabihin na ay wala namang nakakitang mga studies na nagsasabi na totoo si food addiction, ay hindi totoo yung nararamdaman mo. Food addiction actually more falls under a different term, which is called food preoccupation. Preoccupation is constantly thinking and obsessing about food, feeling out of control, and of course, your hyperfixation. When we talk about different types of preoccupations or even addictions, we go back into the why this is happening in the first place. Madalas kasi iniisip natin na pagkain lang ang may kasalanan. Ang sarap kasi ng pagkain, wala lang kasi talaga akong disiplina kaya ako naa-addict sa pagkain. But actually, it's not so much about the food in itself, but other things that are happening in our life that is causing the preoccupation or the obsession around food. And there are so many different things that could lead to this. One of those biggest contributors is actually restrictive dieting. Palagi ko ito sinasabi, pero kapag ka sinabi mo kasi sa sarili mo na bawal mo na kainin ng isang bagay, mas pinag-iisipan mo. When you tell yourself you can't have soda, you can hear every click of the soda everywhere. You hear every can opening, every bottle popping, and you feel that addictive behavior. Kapag sinabi mo bawal ka na sa kanin, biglang lahat ng ulam mas masarap sa kanin. Or if you tell yourself you can't have cake, somehow everybody has a birthday on that week. You hyperfixate over the things you're not allowed to have because you think about it more. And this is why I always say focus on additions rather than restrictions. Because when you're focusing on restrictions, you heighten your sensations for that without giving yourself an actual habit to add. Pag binigyan natin yung sarili na natin ng task or ng habit na dapat idagdag sa buhay natin, tulad ng drink more water or eat more fiber, it gives you a strategy, a path, and a solution compared to constantly avoiding things that are happening in your life. Additions over restrictions is not just about satiety, but also about the mindset that you have around food. Because a large part of feeling that food preoccupation is due to restrictions that have been created. More and more you see food rules that you apply, arbitrary food rules that we create, are the reasons why we think about it more. Kung hindi mo sinabi sa sarili mo na bawal ka na kumain ng kanin, hindi mo mararamdaman na sobrang addict ka sa kanin tuwing nandun siya. Of course, there's another factor to Filipino food just being delicious with rice. But when you don't tell yourself you can't have something, you don't think of it as much. I used to do intermittent fasting where I would only eat from 12 to 6 p.m. 11:59. I would be so hungry and still feel like I wasn't allowed to eat, even if it was only 1 minute away. 6:01 felt like the biggest mistake and illegal thing to do was to eat when it was actually perfectly fine. I placed those arbitrary rules on myself, and I created these restrictions that felt very scary. And the same thing happens kung meron ka namang health concern at sinabihan ka ng doktor o ng dietitian na bawal ka dito o hindi dapat ito kainin o kaya sinasabi na kailangan natin bantayan yung pagkain na ito, mas pag-iisipan natin siya. It's a normal human behavior and reaction. Pero ito yung isa sa pinakamalaking dahilan kung bakit natin nararamdaman na na-obsess tayo sa pagkain ay tuwing sinasabi natin na bawal tayo dito. Now, it's not just, of course, restrictive diets or restrictions in general that cause the feeling of obsession around food. There's also different things and situations that happen in our life. Another big example is food scarcity or the scarcity mindset. Kapag ka lumaki tayo sa isang bahay na food insecure at palagi tayong takot na hindi tayo makakain at ngayon ay mas food secure na tayo, that looming feeling of food insecurity happening again tends to lead us into feeling obsessive or feeling scared that we're gonna run out of food. This scarcity mindset also applies in dieting, where let's say Sunday is the last hurrah that you can finally eat all of the foods that you like, pero Monday bawal na kasi diet ka na. Sa Sunday, uubusin mo at kakainin mo lahat ng pagkain na pwede mong kainin dahil takot ka nang maubusan bukas. Scarcity happens if you've lived in a household with food insecurity. It can also happen if you lived in a household that had a lot of people in the home where you felt like if you didn't eat fast, you couldn't eat. It also can happen when there are strict rules around the house when you grow up. So, of course, you feel like I'm an adult now and I can make my own rules, but you still have those kind of scar tissues from when you were younger. For me, when I was younger, my mom was a vegetarian. And though she didn't implement any strict rules of us having to be vegetarian, whenever I was out at a party, like a birthday party na may mga hot dog, may mga barbecue, kinakain ko talaga yon. At tinatago ko pa yung pagkain na yon, kahit na hindi naman kami pinagbabawalan. Even sodas or all of those food items that we never normally had at home, I was going through them. I think I took that scarcity mindset with me as I grew older, hoarding food in the house and having too much food available at home because of that. Now, I'm not blaming my parents or anything, but it's just something to show that when you grow up, your environment around food plays a big role in how you feel about food now, including food preoccupation. Isa pa dito ay trauma with a small t. If you've experienced any certain traumas in your life, this could be our way of coping by going through food or thinking about food. There was a story that I once read about this person who lived in a household that wasn't the safest environment. Yung takot siya at hindi siya masaya. Habang lumalaki siya, kumakain siya ng kumakain dahil gusto niya na wala nang lalapit sa kanya. She felt like she didn't deserve happiness or kindness or all of these things, and so she resorted to trying to eat herself to a point where nobody would want to even be near her anymore because she just felt like people were so toxic and she didn't like the people in her life. So these are certain things that can happen to us that leads to food preoccupation, where it's not the food in itself, but certain things that have happened to us that lead us to reach for food for either comfort, for peace, or even for punishment of ourselves, which leads us to the earn and burn or punishment and reward system that we might have around food. But ito dahil nung bata ka, nakikita natin na ang mga ice cream, cakes ay reward lamang, tapos yung mga gulay ay parang punishment sa'yo. Those are things that we could take as we grow older, or any sort of motivation that we use around food being I only deserve a cake if I'm good this week, or I have to punish myself with veggies because I gained weight, ay nagkakaroon na naman tayo ng food preoccupation. And another one is also metabolic concerns. Blood sugar issues, where our body is not able to properly process carbohydrates and sugar, causing us to feel addicted to sugar and want more food, which starts to make us think that we are addicted to food, but actually it's a physiological need that our body has to be able to address these concerns. Food obsession and food preoccupation happens for many reasons, but it's not just about food being the enemy or being evil, but more about us discussing further our relationship with food. Ngayon, hindi ganun kadali para ayusin to. Hindi to overnight na maaayos, hindi to sa isang linggo lang maaayos, na hindi ka na biglang mag-iisip ng pagkain at okay ka na bigla to get to the point I am at now. And I'm not even saying that I'm perfect. I still have moments where I'm thinking about food more than I should, or I'm starting to feel that earn and burn, that guilt around food. But I am much better than I was before. So the question that I usually get is, how do I work past this? And how do I get rid of these feelings? Well, let's talk about it. Most of the time, strategies around food addiction and food obsession and preoccupation usually go around the thought of out of sight, out of mind. Pero kung gumagana lang siya habang wala yung pagkain, tapos nakita mo na yung pagkain at tsaka sobra kang naloka at gusto mong kainin, then it doesn't work. Out of sight, out of mind works when the food is out of sight, sure, but our goal is not for it to only be us having peace when it's not available, but for us to be able to see that food and feel okay with our choice of eating it or not. Not feeling forced to eat it just because it's there, and not feeling stressed by the fact that we're not allowed to eat it as it's in front of us. But again, our goal is not to never see that food because we can't control that. Our goal is to be able to feel peace even if we see that food. Now, a few things we have to go through, of course, is through the levels of physiological needs and seeing how food impacts us. So our first level, of course, would be, are you fueled and fed enough? Ang laking dahilan kung bakit tayo na-obsess sa pagkain ay kapag hindi tayo kumakain ng tamang dami. And this, I think, goes back to one of the questions we said a while ago is, how do you even know if you're eating enough or if you're overeating? And that takes time. Sometimes it leads to you overeating for a while before you can find your peace and balance. But here's the thing. Remember, if you are underfueling and undereating, your body is going to be kind of like a car. Pag kulang ng gas yung kotse, magsisend siya ng mga signals or yung orange na gas light para sabihin na dapat ka na magpagas. So when you're constantly thinking about food, it might be a sign that your body is trying to tell you that, hey, you actually need food. So we would start off by creating a consistent meal pattern. Trying to eat every 3 to 4 hours. Planning out meals and snacks to make sure they are satiating and satisfying. And of course, giving yourself enough time for your body to respond to these situations. Hindi ibig sabihin na kumain ka na kada araw, every meal and snack for 2 weeks is that you're automatically not going to think about food anymore. For some people, you may see a significant difference, but for most people, it might take a bit more time than that. Pero uunahin natin yung pagkain sa tamang oras. When you give yourself a more consistent meal pattern, your body will also send you more consistent meal signals. And it might help us reduce the thoughts of food happening at the odd hours or the times of the day that we don't want to be thinking about food. Pangalawa, gusto natin, syempre, nasasatisfy tayo dun sa pagkain na yun. People often ask me, why am I still hungry even if I already have a balanced meal? Well, there's 2 things that create a satisfying meal. Unang-una, physical satisfaction na merong carbs, fiber, protina, tsaka may fats. Napaka-importante yon, yung balancing pagkain. At pangalawa, dapat masarap din yung pagkain mo. Kapag kumain ka ng sinigang, kung wari may gulay, may kanin, merong protina, pero hindi naman maasim yung sinigang, maghahanap ka pa rin ng sinigang o ng ibang pagkain kasi hindi ka naman talaga na-satisfy. It didn't hit the mental satisfaction of that food because it didn't taste as good as you wanted it to. And that is a valid thing. Most people will say, di naman kailangan masarap yung pagkain, kailangan lang makakain ka. But the truth is, the way food tastes plays a very big role in our satisfaction. And like we mentioned, some foods are created just to tingle up that reward system. And that's kind of what we want to feel in our meal, where we're satisfied enough and full enough to move on. Kaya napaka-importante na kahit balanse yung pagkain, naghahanap pa rin tayo ng mga bagay na magpapasarap dito. Adding a dressing or choosing your favorite ulam goes a long way. Now, beyond these habits and routines, we also have to tackle the way we see food. And that goes into the words you use around food. Most people tend to say the words good and bad around food, or even healthy and unhealthy, clean and junk. Ginagawa natin o binibigyan natin ng kapangyarihan yung pagkain. When you call rice bad, you tend to put it on a pedestal and you give it that power over you. But if you call rice, then it's just food. And we want to see food as food because food is not bad or good, it's just food. We want to stop calling foods bad and good because putting these labels makes us internalize them. At hindi ko sinasabi na lahat ng pagkain ay nutritionally equal. Alam naman natin na hindi sila lahat kaparehas ng sustansya na binibigay, but they have no moral value. At mas lalo mong pag-iisipan ang cake at ice cream at mga soda kapag sinabi mong masama yon kesa sa sinabi mo na pagkain to, dessert to, because when you see it as bad, you think about it more, you want it more, you obsess about not having it, versus if you just see it as food. So, hindi natin sinasabi na pare-parehas o pantay-pantay ng sustansya ang mga pagkain, pero ang sinasabi lang natin, hindi siya bad and good, wala siyang moral value. At pwede naman tayo pumili ng pagkain hindi lang dahil sa sustansya, pero kundi dahil sa lasa. Ang hinahanap lang natin ay syempre, balanse. Diving deeper into the words we use around food can play such a big role in our relationship with food. It's not bad, it's just bread. It's not good, it's just a broccoli. And they all offer something. Sometimes it's fiber and iron, but sometimes it's also satiety and joy, and those are still valid reasons to eat. Pero pinipili natin ang pagkain hindi dahil sa takot tayo. We're not choosing food because of pressure or fear. Pumipili tayo ng pagkain dahil napapakinggan natin ang ating katawan. But that takes time, and we just need some patience in that regard. And another important aspect in dealing with food preoccupation, and I probably should have said this first, but it's really diving in and figuring out where it comes from for you. Is it the restrictive behaviors or diet that you've gone from in the past? Is it the health concerns and metabolism that you might have? Is it the environment that you grew up on? Is it trauma with a small t? Is it all of these different things that you have experienced in your life that has caused a relationship with food that isn't the one that you want, or isn't your relationship with food, but a relationship of multiple years of people telling you what you're supposed to think and feel around food that has caused you to feel so preoccupied by food that you can't live your life fully. You have to find out what that is. Kasi pag nalaman mo kung ano yun, mas pwede natin bigyan ng pansin at daanan ito. Because it's not just cutting out food that's going to solve this problem. It's diving in deeper to where it's coming from in the first place. And for me, it was largely related to my body image and my self-worth and my feeling of not being in control of my life. And it was also very much related to my fears around food and restrictive dieting na kailangan ko talagang pag-isipan at daanan ng ilang taon sa buhay ko. So it's going to take some time, but you have to be willing to do the work and not be afraid to dive into what you might find. It's not just about food, because your relationship with food is often a reflection of your relationship with yourself. And you have to deem yourself and see yourself as worthy of nourishment and kindness for this to heal. Now, if you do want to talk more about this and dive into it more with some guidance, I do suggest that you reach out to a professional. I also have a program that focuses more about binge eating and your relationship with food, and that is in the description if ever you want to work together. But I hope this episode helped us just enlighten and discuss more about food preoccupation and how it feels to have food be the center of your life and how it doesn't have to be that way. Now, before we go, let's do an outfit check. This top right here, which is a little roughly off-the-shoulder, double off-the-shoulder top. It's color yellow if you're not seeing it. But this is from Tayo Studio. Love their clothes. I bought a few pieces the last week. This necklace that I have, which is a tropical fruit necklace, is from Tropic Beatnik on Instagram. And they're also usually in like the fairs and local fairs and art fairs that sell different clothes. And that's how I got this one. I've got my donut earrings from the Craftolio as always. And I have my little scarf or bandana that actually has a lot of jeepneys and local art, which was from 3am Art Ballet on Instagram. Sana nakatulong ang episode na to sa'yo sa journey mo sa pagkain. And if you want to see or hear more episodes like this, then don't forget to subscribe or follow wherever you're listening to the episode. You can also follow me at itsjosebstian on pretty much every platform for more nutrition tips and just vlogs and life of how to find your balance and get to where you want to be. And you can also follow at the Donut Box Pod on Instagram to be part of the next episodes. Kaya ayun ang pag-uusapan natin ngayon. And until the next episode, you always deserve to eat. Thanks for listening to the pod. This is the Donut Box.